What's up, everybody? My name is Grant, and I'm on a mission to watch every movie ever made. This month, I watched 11 2026 releases, and I'm here today to rank them from worst to best. Of all the movies coming out in 2026, which ones are worth your time, and which ones should you skip altogether? So, I've got a collection of 11 movies from horror to action to romance, and we're going to jump right into it. What was the worst 2026 release that I saw this month? In last place on my list, the worst 2026 movie that I watched this month was Ladies First, directed by Thea Sharrock and starring Sacha Baron Cohen and Rosamund Pike. This is a movie that came out on May 22nd, so not long before the end of the month. Netflix dropped this original movie about a misogynistic man played by Sacha Baron Cohen who hits his head right before he's set to become CEO of this major marketing company. And he wakes up in a world where men have never taken over and women are instead in charge of governments and businesses, and there's a female pope, and people say a woman instead of a men. So it's a completely gender bent world where women are in men's places of power and positions of authority in society, and men are often left to stand by and look pretty. This is a typical Netflix comedy that you will get from them a lot of times. It is pretty surface level in a lot of its metaphors and themes and imagery. They do simple little jokes where instead of it being Burger King, they have an ad in Times Square for Burger King. Like I mentioned, they have the jokes about the female pope and saying a woman instead of a men. So they're very surface level. Hey, how can we switch the word man to the word woman wherever possible in order to create this kind of opposite universe for Sacha Baron Cohen to realize that he's been a bad person and that he needs to change to get better if he ever has any chance of making it back to the normal world. That's the movie they set out to make, and honestly, it's the movie that we got. Sacha Baron Cohen isn't unfunny in this movie. I think Rosamund Pike probably has the best performance out of anybody here, and you get some all right side performances as well from some pretty notable actors. The main one that comes to mind is Charles Dance was in this movie as one of Sacha Baron Cohen's co-workers in the company who also carries a lot of the same misogynistic, sexist viewpoints as Cohen's main character does at the beginning of the movie. So he kind of stays here as this mirror to who the main character was and who he's trying to be by the end of the movie. You have some good performances in this, and it is adequately written to be the most basic Netflix original that you can get. I honestly didn't hate it and I have it at a 6 out of 10, but when you get a movie like this, you kind of have to ask yourself the question, why bother? If Netflix is going to put in the bare minimum into making original movies like this, even if they're okay, and even if they kind of fulfill exactly what you expected from them, how low have our expectations become? That it honestly isn't even disappointing to see something like this from Netflix. That this has sort of become the base level expectations of what we'll get. I didn't hate the movie near as much as I thought I would, and there are some parts to be enjoyed, and it's really not that bad of a time. But it does concern me that if everything that Netflix releases is around this level of quality, pretty soon I'm gonna be sick of seeing movies that are just passable and adequate. That's why it's in last place on my list of the movies I watched this May that came out this year. In 10th place on my list, the second lowest movie that I saw this month, it was Forbidden Fruits, directed by Meredith Allaway. This is a movie starring Lily Reinhart, Lola Tung, Victoria Pedretti, and Alexandra Shipp. And it's about these four women that work in a mall at a clothing store. And Lola Tung plays the new character who comes in while these other three girls have been working together for a while. And as she gets integrated into this friend group, you learn pretty quickly that they basically have a coven of witches in the mall. And Lily Reinhart is kind of the mastermind behind this, who has been controlling these other two girls' lives as well as the lives of a bunch of people around them. So it is really a movie that, if you take one look at me, you realize that I'm not the target demographic for a movie about witches in a mall. This movie did not set out to appeal to me, but even so, I did have a little bit of fun with it. I did enjoy a lot of the colorful settings that the movie took place in. I think when you put a movie in a mall, you have a lot of opportunity to make it feel very familiar to everybody, not like a movie that you can just relate to if you are a young adult female who works in a clothing store. It was a lot of pretty fun ideas put into this movie. I do think that it's at about 100 minutes long. Isn't overly long. It doesn't run too far and outplay a lot of its ideas. In just about an hour 45, you get a perfect amount of time to understand these characters and what they're going through and what the conflict of the movie is. And then it's over, and you can go on with the rest of your day. So I know that this movie isn't really meant for me, and that's why it can't really be that high up on my list. But I also don't have a lot of bad things to say about Forbidden Fruits. The story is based on a short play, something that was probably only about 30 minutes on stage. And when you have something that comes from a very short story and you do try to pad it out into a movie length, you can really only make it so rich and so deep before it starts feeling like you're just kind of making things up. And at times, Forbidden Fruits did start to edge into that territory, but ultimately it stayed out of it enough for me to have a good time with this. That's why I have it rated a 7 out of 10. But I enjoyed a lot of movies I saw this month more, which is why it is so low on my list. In ninth place, I've got the Super Mario Galaxy movie, directed by Aaron Horvath and Michael Jelenic, and starring Chris Pratt, Anya Taylor-Joy, Charlie Day, Jack Black. All the classic actors are back from the first movie. The Super Mario Galaxy movie is a perfectly okay sequel. I watched the first Super Mario Brothers in theaters. I saw this one at a drive-in theater, and my main complaint about the first one was the plot and characters felt a little poorly written and a little simplistic. I really hoped that with the Super Mario Galaxy trailer getting as much buzz and as much publicity as it did, I was really hopeful that they would take the opportunity to step this up a notch and create a better movie that told a richer story and used their characters better. And instead, unfortunately, Horvath and Jelinek kind of doubled down on exactly what people didn't like about the first movie. It was incredibly simple. A lot of the characters were there pretty much just for a cameo or just to be part of the plot for 5 minutes, maybe 10, and then they moved on and then they weren't there for the rest of the movie or they played a very minor role. A lot of characters that we deserved to see more of on screen, whether that was Yoshi, Rosalina, even Peach, felt relegated to the sidelines. Luigi felt like he wasn't as important of a character. Instead, we get a significant amount of screen time dedicated to a what should have been a cameo of Fox McCloud from Glenn Powell, which I love Glenn Powell. I think he's a great new actor, and I really want to see what he does next. And I enjoyed seeing him in the Super Mario Galaxy movie as Fox McCloud. I love all of those things. Do I think it should have been in the second Super Mario movie when they haven't even developed these characters well in the first one? No, I don't think they should have. I think they should have waited to do the Super Mario Galaxy premise all together. You have another game in there. You have Super Mario World. It includes Yoshi. You can throw in a new character and you can give the characters more time to grow before you take them into the galaxy setting that made the game so much fun. I grew up on Super Mario Galaxy, and so I did get a lot of joy seeing the planets and the worlds and the mechanics that made the game so recognizable and so iconic and so nostalgic. This movie does appeal to nostalgia and to fun, but it's not well written and it's not well made. So I can recognize my own enjoyment of it. And I can say, hey, I loved this movie. I loved seeing a lot of the things in this movie and had a fun time with this movie. 7 out of 10. But it's also just not a very good movie. It's not well written. And unfortunately, I fear that the third movie we get in this series won't be a lot better because they aren't taking the time to learn the lessons that they need to from these last two. We'll see. I really hope they can create a better third movie that steps it up. And I did have fun with this one, so I hope they can keep that going as well. But as this movie exists in its current state, it's ninth place on my list of the 2026 releases I saw this month. In eighth place on my list of 2026 releases I saw this month, I've got Wuthering Heights, directed by Emerald Fennell and starring Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. Would you guys immediately click off the video if I told you I didn't absolutely hate this one? I recognize so many flaws in this movie. It is incredibly uncomfortable to watch. At times, it feels overplayed. It is completely disattached from any of the original storytelling from Emily Bronte. It makes absolutely no sense why she went down this path and why she created this version of the movie that she did. That said, there is certainly some striking imagery in this movie. I think it is well acted. I think it is well performed. I think a lot of the dialogue that does come from the books, even if it doesn't mean the same thing in this movie's context and in this movie's themes, you can't deny that the dialogue is well written and it does at times uh, strike at the same tragic imagery that we did originally see uh, in various other adaptations of this movie. I don't think this is the worst movie that I've ever seen. Now, if we're talking about adaptations, I'm sure that this is an absolutely horrendous version of Wuthering Heights. But Emerald Fennell, if nothing else, is talented at filmmaking. She may not be a good writer and she may not be a good adaptionist or whatever the word for that you might call it, but she knows how to make a movie look good and she knows how to make it feel like a blockbuster. And that's really hard for me to absolutely hate. So there was still a lot out of this movie that I did find something to enjoy in. Now, it is still pretty low on my list of the movies that I saw this month. It's obviously not going to be in any of my top 10 lists, any of my top 20 lists, most likely by the end of the year. But I won't say that I hated it because that would be a lie just to avoid an uncomfortable movie. So, not the worst movie I've ever seen. Obviously, has a lot of flaws, but Emerald Fennell knows how to create a movie. She knows how to film it. She knows how to make it look unique, if nothing else. Number seven on my list, I've got Swap, directed by Nathan Greno and starring Michael B. Jordan and Juno Temple. This is a children's animated movie where Michael B. Jordan plays a little chipmunk like creature and he switches bodies accidentally with a bird like creature that is trying to uh, fight with him in kind of a Freaky Friday scenario. And they're forced to work together, even though they both hate each other, in order to figure out how do they get back into their original bodies and ultimately save the day of all the woodland creatures around from whatever monster or bad guys there might be in these woods. Right? It is a very simple kids movie. But I really like what Nathan Greno was able to do here. Nathan Greno was one of the two directors behind my favorite movie of all time, Disney's Tangled. So seeing that he was on this movie gave me a little bit of hope that it wouldn't be that bad. I did come into this expecting maybe a 6 out of 10, and so having it at a 7, I can't say it was the greatest movie I've ever seen, But I was pleasantly surprised that this was a movie that feels like it should have been made 20 years ago. And I mean that as a compliment. Even some of the animated movies that weren't that good from 20 years ago, I'm talking things like Ice Age, which I really like Ice Age. I really enjoy the first two, maybe even three movies in that series. But you take something like Ice Age or like Rio, these aren't standing toe to toe with things like The Lion King, Wally, Ratatouille, Tangled. These movies aren't going to be uh, really held up as best picture material or best animated feature material. But that doesn't mean they aren't still fun. This is absolutely a movie that if I had kids, I would have put this on for my kids and they would have had a lot to learn and appreciate about this movie. You know, it really does go for that path of let's just tell a good story for kids. Let's put it in an animated format where we can really have some fun with the worlds and the characters and how everything looks. You know, let's not go the cheap path of making a CGI adaptation of a movie that came out 10 years ago. Disney, I'm looking at you for the live action Moana. This movie deserves to exist, even if it's not personally my favorite movie, and even if it's really not targeted towards me. I see a lot of really positive things that this movie can do for children and for animation in Hollywood. It's great. There's nothing really wrong about this movie except that it's a movie for kids, and I don't have any, and am not one. So that's why it is so low on my list, but I had a good time with this one, and really, I don't have any negative things to say about it. In sixth place on my list, I've got Antoine Fuqua's Michael. Michael is a music biopic about Michael Jackson, one of the most popular musicians of all time. And as somebody who absolutely despises music biopics, to have this one so high on my list is pretty high praise for what could have been my least favorite movie, not just of this month, but of the year. If it really stuck to some of the absolute boredom inducing qualities of a lot of biopics, I would have absolutely hated this one. Now, I recognize this movie isn't always the most interesting, but when it wants to look good, it does. When it wants to put on a great music video sequence, it does. As somebody who didn't know a lot about Michael Jackson going into this, I did get a decent amount of information out of this biopic. I really think a lot of my enjoyment of this movie comes down to Antoine Fuqua. I really like this director. I've watched a lot of his movies. I enjoy all three of the Equalizer movies. I also enjoy his remake of The Magnificent Seven. I think he's a well-regarded director who I enjoy seeing his work. I think he does a good job anytime he puts something on screen, and I think he was really well served by Jafar Jackson, the nephew of Michael Jackson, who played him here in the titular role. I think Jafar Jackson is incredible. And while I think the buzz around this movie wasn't positive enough to get Jafar Jackson an Oscar nomination for Best Lead Actor, I think if he did manage to squeeze his way in and get one, I would be pretty happy about it. I don't think he deserves the win. I think there are acting performances I've seen in 2026 that are already better, but if he were to get a nod or some kind of recognition for his role here as his uncle Michael Jackson, I would absolutely be down for it. He did a fantastic job here. Really, everybody did a good job at putting together a music biopic, one that is unfortunately a little too long and has a little bit of bloat in the middle, but manages to be a pretty fun time. Tell a story about a musician that everybody knows and most people love. And even if you aren't really a fan of Michael Jackson, as long as this isn't the type of story that you just absolutely can't look past because of your own personal opinions about the musician, I think you'll have an okay time with this movie. I would recommend it. I do think it's a good time. I have it at an 8 out of 10. Definitely something you guys should check out when you get the chance. In fifth place, I've got Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride. This is a movie that a lot of people had some rather controversial opinions of. Some people absolutely love this movie, some people absolutely hate it and consider it one of the worst movies of 2026. And this says a lot going into it, as this was a movie starring Jesse Buckley and Christian Bale, two actors that people have really positive opinions of. Jesse Buckley, when this movie came out, was still campaigning for the Oscar that she would ultimately win for her performance in Hamnet. She didn't know whether she was going to win that Oscar yet, and some people even looked at this movie as a potential barrier for her to win her well-deserved Oscar because of how bad they considered her performance in this one. And for all those people who consider this movie bad and poorly acted and poorly written, do you guys not understand camp? Because this is the campiest movie that has come out in 2026 so far, and I love it. I love a good campy movie, whether that's campy horror or campy romance. This sort of blends the line between the two, and you get this gothic romance Bonnie and Clyde story between Frankenstein or Frankenstein's monster and the bride. This movie tells an incredibly unique story about the 1930s setting of Chicago and then New York, and how the bride and Frankenstein sort of go off on this crime spree across the United States after what was originally just Frankenstein defending the bride. I think Maggie Gyllenhaal has a very unique way of creating a movie that makes this just such a fun time. It is not like a lot of other movies you will see, and even if the dialogue and the plot aren't for you, this movie deserves to be seen just for the craft that a ton of people put into it. I had a fantastic time with this movie. I recognize that there are a lot of flaws in how it was written and how it was told, but ultimately those don't matter to me near as much as just enjoying what I saw. So I have it at number 5 on my list. I've got it rated at an 8 out of 10. It recently dropped on HBO Max. Go check it out. Coming in at number 4 on this list, I've got Ready or Not 2, Here I Come by Matt Bettinelli Olpin and Tyler Gillett, the two guys behind Radio Silence. I saw the first Ready or Not this year in preparation of this movie coming out, and I thought it was okay. I didn't really love it. I don't really love this kind of survival thriller vibe that the first movie had going for it. So ultimately, I went into this one expecting to kind of feel the same way. I haven't really loved a Radio Silence movie until this point. Ready or Not 2 is a lot of fun. It really steps up the action and the violence of the first movie, which kind of played it a little subdued and managed to keep the main character's hands clean. Ready or Not 2 immediately jumps into the gore and the violence following straight off of the story from the first one. I'm talking maybe uh 6 hours later, here we are, it's the second movie, let's go. Which is always a fun thing to see a sequel do, to start off immediately after the first one. It really helps keep the momentum up, especially if, like me, you watched the movies really close together. I think I had about 2 or 3 weeks in between my watching of the first one and the second one. Ready or Not 2 is just a lot of fun. I think Samara Weaving is the horror movie icon of the 2020s and of this current generation of actresses. I think she is kind of claiming the role that Jamie Lee Curtis might have had in the 80s and 90s of horror, maybe the 70s and 80s. I don't know if I'm remembering correctly, but she is a certified scream queen. And for her to have Catherine Newton alongside her in this movie, it really made a fantastic pairing that they managed to bounce off of each other really well. They had a great dual central performance with each other. A lot of the side performances were really fun as well. I think the big performances that you have in here are Elijah Wood, Sarah Michelle Gellar. You have these actors that you have known for a long time in Hollywood, and they really come and manage to add to it by you recognize them and then they play up these roles so much that you have a lot of fun with the characters that they create themselves to be. Ready or Not 2, Here I Come is a much better sequel and a much better movie than its predecessor was. I really recommend this one. And if you have to watch the first one in order to get to it, then I think it makes the first one more worth watching. I really enjoyed this. That's why it's sitting at number 4 on my list. You guys should absolutely go check it out. Coming in at number 3 on my list, I've got Mortal Kombat 2, directed by Simon McQuoid and starring everybody's favorite actor right now in nerd culture, Carl Urban. He comes in as Johnny Cage after the character's notable absence in the 2021 Mortal Kombat, and he does a great job on screen here, really stepping up a lot of the action and the video game charm that the first one kind of was lacking with its more gritty portrayal of the Mortal Kombat universe. I might be overrating this one a significant amount, but Mortal Kombat 2 is such a stupidly fun movie. It's the absolute epitome of what every single one of these Mortal Kombat movies has been going for since the very beginning, and even the game, since it was an arcade machine. It wants to be carnage candy. A lot of fun, a lot of fights. You don't really go to this for the plot, you don't go to it for the deep messaging. You go to see these cool characters beat each other up and perform some fatalities. And if Mortal Kombat 2 is nothing else, it is absolutely a video game adaptation of the original arcade Mortal Kombat games. It's a lot of fun. It's not a lot of depth to it. It is not a lot of material that you can chew on or think about. But if you want to see Carl Urban beat up a bunch of people and put his sunglasses back on and look cool while doing it, this is the movie for you. Had a lot of fun with this one. Absolutely recommend that when it comes out onto streaming, you guys watch it as soon as possible if you didn't already see it in theaters. At number 2 on my list, probably the most surprising movie I saw this month that really managed to outperform what I expected of it. It's Kirill Sokolov's They Will Kill You, starring Zazie Beetz. This movie is what the Ready or Not series thought they were doing before they took a more grounded approach and kept it kind of realistic to what the real world is, minus all the Satan demon worshipping stuff that you get in both of these stories. But They Will Kill You feels like Quentin Tarantino fell asleep and dreamt up a horror movie. This movie is weird. It is so uniquely styled to feel like something Tarantino or even Robert Rodriguez would have created and then thought was too rough to put to screen without making some edits. This movie is just completely crazy. It's completely uh, full speed ahead, 100 miles per hour from beginning to end. It jumps right into the action and right into the gore and right into the violence in a way that's just so unusual to see in modern 2020s movies. You have to have a lot more depth usually and a lot more storytelling. And if you've noticed anything from the trends of Mortal Kombat 2, Ready or Not, They Will Kill You being so high on my list, you know that I love a good story. But if you can create an action movie that's just a lot of fun and has a lot of great set pieces, I'm probably going to end up enjoying that one a little bit more. This movie feels like a video game, kind of like Mortal Kombat 2, but honestly, even more so. It's got levels and boss fights and upgrades and collectibles. It has everything like weapons sitting on the ground that should just be floating there with a big pick me up icon for the player to notice on their way through the level to the next mini boss. This movie just goes completely insane and says, how can we make this as fun and chaotic as possible and not worry about a bunch of other things like plot and dialogue and character development? No, this has some really talented actors and performances from Patricia Arquette, Heather Graham, Tom Felton, David Viviers. You have a lot of fun performances on here that really highlight this movie and just create something that is hard to forget whether you love it or not, which I just so happen to. Again, this is a movie that isn't perfect, and so even at number 2 on my list, it's still sitting at an 8 out of 10. But I love this one a lot more than I think it's a good movie. It is an absolute favorite of the year so far. And in first place, the best 2026 release that I saw this month. It's actually the shortest movie on this list for quite a while, and it's the only one that I've also already talked about. It is The Punisher One Last Kill, directed by Ronaldo Marcus Green and starring John Bernthal. If you know anything about the MCU right now, you know Spider Man Brand New Day is right around the corner. And with that, John Bernthal returns to the MCU as Frank Castle. In Frank Castle's first theatrical performance since Punisher Warzone, which came out in 2008. It has been a very long time coming, almost 20 years since his character was last on the big screen. And before Frank Castle returns in full speed in Spider Man Brand New Day, John Bernthal took it around the block and tried out his performance, practiced it a little bit in this MCU special presentation. I've seen two of these now. The first one, Werewolf by Night, was one of my favorite movies of the year it came out. The Punisher One Last Kill might be up there along with it. While I don't love it quite as much as Werewolf by Night, it was the best movie I saw this month, and there wasn't a lot of competition for what would be in that spot. John Bernthal is incredible in this role. The action is as good and iconic as ever, and the character of Frank Castle deserves to be seen in the MCU exactly as is portrayed here. With all of the fighting and all of the intensity and all of the emotion that we get, this movie is exactly what we deserve of the character. It's exactly what John Bernthal deserves for his career. This movie is a true portrayal of who the Punisher is. It was the best movie I saw this month out of all 11, and it was only about 45 minutes long. So, just an absolute highlight of the month. It came out at the beginning of May. So, if you haven't gotten the chance to see it on Disney Plus yet, go see it as soon as possible. In fact, go click on it right after you see this video. But when you do, come back here and tell me what did you think of this new movie and what was your favorite movie of 2026 that you got to see either for a first watch, a rewatch, or you just got to catch up on it and catch it when it got to streaming. What was the best movie 2026 you saw this month? Let me know down in the comments, guys. Go ahead and check out the video that pops up on screen, guys. I've got a lot of interesting movies that I've already seen this year, and there are a lot of interesting movies that I am looking forward to seeing. So keep an eye out for what comes up next. I'm really excited to talk about the movies that I watch in June to catch up on. Movies like Hoppers and like The Moment. But let me know, guys, what movies of 2026 should I watch next? Have a great day.